Okay, so both Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy 14 have super unique endgames, and both of them come with unique stresses. Supporting in Guild Wars 2 is like trying to herd a group of cats to stay together, where healing in 14 is a very fine ballet that if you miss your step, you're dead. Today I'm going to be looking at these differences and my experience as a healer in Final Fantasy 14 coming from Guild Wars 2. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Guild Wars Reforged and Guild Wars 2 content, as well as streaming for Final Fantasy 14. I've now been streaming 14 every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard for about 2 years now, mainly playing through the MSQ, trying different jobs, and finishing up some of the side quests. But one of my favorite things is getting a major taste of the raiding and dungeon scene, and it has been a bit of a culture shock. Now, I have played support in Guild Wars 2, and it becomes kind of reactive and albeit a bit spammy with your skills, knowing that I have to maintain boons, I have to position correctly, still DPSing appropriately, but a lot of the thinking and movements are oriented around if my cooldown is up and if I need to press it. I believe it is also fair to say that I have not gotten into super high-end game rating for either game, but I have experience both in what they have to offer. When I'm in Guild Wars 2, my focus is so heavily on either the commander tag or watching what the boss is doing. Do I have to move? Can I stay here? I'm watching my character intently and adjusting as need be, whereas in contrast, as a healer in 14 through Endwalker, I think I could maybe tell you like what 2 out of the dozen bosses actually look like, because honestly, I'm staring at my party list like it's my tax returns. That was such a shock to me coming from Guild Wars 2. Going into 14, essentially, you need to watch the boss's cast bar and your party, and that's mainly what you do. A lot of the moves here in 14 are scripted, and it becomes like a beautiful ballet dance that destroys you if you misstep a single time. Whereas I found like the support with Guild Wars 2 was just basically spam the abilities almost on cooldown and fight the boss. I became so intently focused on those two trackers that I rarely had time to enjoy the scenery or the boss designs, maybe Nefeka. But because I get to watch through my high resolution monitor, 8 health bars go up and down. It's whack-a-mole with a spreadsheet, basically. But that was an adjustment of moving where my eyes need to focus on the screen. Of course, any kind of heads-up display will give you a lot of information. With Guild Wars 2, I could actually watch my character, watch the boss, and know what to do, because I only have so many abilities that I need to focus on. And basically, I'm just pressing the buttons as they go through. Most of our heals and most of our boons are just automatically applied AoE. I don't have to think about giving it to an individual player, whereas 14, I gotta be able to click and work with each one, and that was a shock to me. Now take the stress of playing filler up with the 7 other party members and then toss in some DPS rotations, and it becomes the shock of the ABC rule, or always be casting. This is essentially like I never have any downtime as a healer, which has taken me a lot longer to actually understand and digest, because in Guild Wars 2, it's basically you just keep pressing the same buttons, you don't worry about it. In 14, especially as a healer, I had to know when to DPS, I had to know when to heal, and when to think about it. The rule is basically like you are saving heals cast later in a longer fight by killing the boss quicker. I mean, I played as an astrologian who only has a few DPS abilities and really doesn't benefit from DPSing as compared to healers like the Sage or the Scholar. And like what really shocked me was the anxiety of if people are dying, it's the healer's fault. But also in 14, if the boss isn't dying fast enough, it's also the healer's fault. I don't really know if I was prepared for the pressure as a healer, honestly, but I had heard the term tanxiety, where people were nervous about tanking and leading a group, whereas I was I had like little green DPS anxiety, because I don't know if I'm doing enough DPS and healing. I mean, even in some cases, I've been a tank floating around like 20%, and I've had healers just be like, and I quote the one great Civ HD,
"Real man, say, if you have more than 1 HP, you are ready to go."
Comparatively, as a support in Guild Wars 2, a lot of that damage that you deal is baked in, especially if you were like full heal support, as you take the boss's aggro, you cast your healing while also providing the critical boons almost all in one. there is really no expectation of DPSing as well, or if you do DPS, it's basically built into all of your skills. 14 really took me for a ride as far as healing and DPSing at the same time, because it came down to the game knowledge and choice. And I will stress, I'm not even playing the healer classes that are supposed to DPS, which heals while they are dealing the damage. It's wild. It took me a bit of time to understand that. So I really think it boils down to two different design approaches, like the chaos of Guild Wars 2 combat being very reactive and 14 being scripted and punishing dance. I mean, I've always appreciated Guild Wars 2 because it puts a lot of the pressure onto the individual player as far as survival, rather than just on the healers. Each build has a dedicated heal on a small timer that, despite there being a healing support, they can use that to keep themselves up pretty regularly. Not to mention any defensive skill that they can spec into for their own survival, condition cleanse, barrier, what have you. And of course, there's also the dodge roll being one of the best individual survival skills in MMOs. And it puts all that pressure onto the player to dodge accordingly rather than just pure positioning and the healing checks. Basically, most supports can do an easier job of keeping allies up because the allies' preservation is split between the healer and the party member. Conversely, the dance of 14 is very scripted, and you can almost set an exact timer of when damage is coming. I mean, 14 really becomes much easier if you know the mechanics well and you can time these appropriately. Granted, there is some reactiveness when an ally stands in the incorrect spot or there's overlapping damage, but this is like to be expected with healing. I've noticed with each Endwalker, for example, and each Endwalker boss I have fought thus far basically starts out the fight with a massive high damage AoE. I'm already precasting an AoE heal to pop right after this lands. And it's kind of scripted. Okay, I know what to expect. Honestly, Guild Wars 2 kind of like respects your bad memory, and 14 demands you to remember the script. I mean, both of these are just terrible for my blood pressure, if I'm to be honest. I do want to bring up the community on both sides of this comparison because they both approach these failings kind of differently. I will admit that both do also offer very similar and encouraging feedback when you are a Sprout who is just learning the game, or a fresh level 80 who's trying to do a strike for the first time. When there is a wipe in Guild Wars 2, the group ends up saying that it's like, huh, that was weird. Anyway, in 14, it seems like there's a little bit more of a discussion that starts, especially if it's into something that's a little bit more difficult. I've been doing a lot of my end game raiding and dungeon, we'll say, on mine difficulty, where it's basically there's no added benefits. It's basically you are the lowest possible item level that you could be, as well as there's no boons that you get if you fail. So it's basically as hard as it can possibly go without going into a higher difficulty. And I also will say that I've been a little bit blessed in 14 compared to the average player, because I have had a fairly steady group of players who join me and hardly ever give me any kind of like negative feedback or crap for failing, aside from pint size. For 14, it seems like it's more of a formal and respectful discussion on how we handle wipes, whereas Guild Wars 2 is basically everyone shrugging and moving on and maybe not even saying a word. I do also like to point out that roulettes and other ways, I do like that you can get commendations, which is a fantastic way to encourage positive feedback in 14, whereas Guild Wars 2 doesn't really have a system like that. So my final thoughts is that healers in 14 are just really anxious DPS with side jobs. I will say that it has been much harder as a learning curve to understand when to heal and when to DPS and to dance appropriately versus picking up healing in Guild Wars 2. However, I won't say either is better or worse. It's just simply different. Guild Wars 2 has a fast pace and chaotic combat, whereas 14 rewards you with the satisfaction of executing a perfect plan and hoping that the other 7 players did the same. Honestly, I've enjoyed both, but learning to play healer for the very first time in any MMO, I was really glad that it was 14, and I have truly enjoyed the experience. If you are a 14 player, just discover I am currently playing through post-Endwalker content for the first time live every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. I hope to see you there. If you are just getting into Guild Wars 2 and want to know why I'm excited about the game in 2026, you can click this video here. Otherwise, stay caffeinated, folks.